Alex O'Connor, the king of the new age atheist movement. He's such a charming, debonair, well-spoken, elegant, very smart. The guy's been making his rounds in podcasts. Honestly, I like listening to Alex O'Connor. He gets on with the likes of Cliff and Stewart. He's talked to Ruslan. He's been on with a few people that, are in the space of pushing the word, and he's respectfully, kind-heartedly, pushing back. But Alex O'Connor has been a little bit going into the lore and kind of like revealing himself as wanting to follow, wanting to believe. This is actually one of the videos recently that he's, talking to a guy about Jesus doing extraordinary stuff. He doesn't deny the existence of Jesus. But let's see what Alex O'Connor has to say about Jesus.
For me, the most troublesome part of Christianity, for its truth, for me personally, is its clinging on to the Old Testament, is the fact that Jesus is portrayed as the fulfillment of the Jewish scripture. And so you cannot let go of this Yahweh figure in the Old Testament who's really troublesome.
And that's why they have to have him in Bethlehem to connect him to David and things like that. And so actually, because when you look at the historicity of Jesus, then it starts to there was clearly a guy called Jesus, but he wasn't born in Bethlehem. There wasn't a census. Herod was dead by this point. It seems to me that they wanted him in Bethlehem to connect him to the Old Testament. And does that matter? I mean, because there was a Jesus guy.
Yeah.
He said some stuff. Clearly, he said something so strong that people for the next 2,000 years have reacted. Mm-hmm. And indeed, in the first 50 years, they reacted very strongly to it. So there must be... That's one of the great interesting things about religion, why Jesus created a religion that lasted and spread around the world so quickly.
Yeah, Jesus did something extraordinary, and you're right to say that basically nobody doubts he existed. There are some Jesus mythicists who think that he didn't exist. But yeah, he existed. It's also quite well established that he was crucified, which is quite an extraordinary fact, because whatever he was saying annoyed people enough that they put him to death in the most sort of gory way a person can imagine. And it's unlikely to be the kind of thing that would have just been like made up out of the blue as well.
Yeah, and I just want to touch on that because, crucifixion was very well documented. The Romans were very good at what they did when it came to crucifixion. This was their way of doing a public humiliation, and also their way of making sure that the job gets done. When you get crucified, you're getting hung by your own body weight, and little by little, just go on a bar and hang yourself. You could feel that you're muscling yourself up, right? There's a part of you that's holding yourself up. But little by little, if you're there for a day or two, your joints are separating and they dislocate. It was very well known to break bones and dislocate joints during crucifixion. But I read a prophecy that was fulfilled by Jesus, that when they slaughtered a lamb, the pure lamb, they wouldn't break the bones, before it gets slaughtered during the Passover. And with Jesus, taking the place as a pure lamb, he had no broken bones, no dislocation, nothing. But all that to say, the Romans were very good at making sure that crucifixions were well documented, because they didn't just choose everybody to get crucified. It was a public humiliation. They must have done something to really piss somebody off. And they made sure that they were dead. When the guy went over to Jesus and he stabbed him on the side, blood splattered all over him. That was well documented too. And what was also well documented is that Roman soldier, he had bad sight. He couldn't see well. And when the blood splattered all over him, he was able to see again. And that was the enemy of God. He was the one to jab the spear into Jesus' side. And what happened to him? You could look at it yourself. He went across the nation and also preached the good news. It's crazy. Once a Roman soldier, literally the reason why Jesus died, saw a miracle, started following.
Because, like, God becoming a man is already troublesome enough for many people, but for him to be crucified, like now we see the cross as a really beautiful and important symbol. People wear it around their necks, but at the time, I mean, this is an instrument of torture. One of the
For slaves often as well.
Possibly the earliest depiction of Jesus that we have in art. I think it's tied for the so-called magical gemstone in the British Library, but tied for the earliest depiction of Jesus anywhere. Any image of Jesus is a bit of graffiti. It's a graffito which was etched into the wall of the Palatine Hill in Rome.
Yeah.
And I think it dates from I want to say the 2nd or 3rd century.
Okay.
Right. And it's a stick figure of a man with a donkey's head being crucified and another man worshipping him. And it writes out in Greek, Alexamenos worships his god, or Alexamenos worships God. So somebody is making fun of this guy called Alexamenos for worshipping this donkey-headed god who gets crucified. Given that people used to mock Yahweh as a donkey-headed deity, that's a whole thing. And
Man, that is so just gross and disrespectful. But look, I did a quick Google search on Alexamenos graffito, and just look at this. I don't even know. Is this guy known for art? Because this looks like my 2-year-old son did this, right? Like, what's even going on here? Why did this even make it big? It was etched into the wall. Okay. Oh wow, color. Wow, we are moving forward in the technology space. All right, let's continue.
And the fact that this man's on a cross, it's quite clearly Jesus being depicted. Somebody's worshipping a god who's crucified.
Yeah.
It's definitely a Christian image. But the very earliest depiction that we have is somebody making fun of Alexamenos because he's worshipping this crucified man.
Yeah.
So the story's quite extraordinary, right? The question is what actually happened. And an interesting thing about biographies, and the Gospels are biographies, basically, with, I think, some mythical elements as well. In particular, the birth narratives. Nobody really, would have known who Jesus was. You know, if we are to believe these stories, he's born of a virgin, it's all prophesied, and so, of course, people would know. But I think historically, nothing really happened with Jesus until he was in his 30s. So what is it that ancient biographers do with people like Alexander the Great? They construct these birth narratives, which are not historical, are not even really meant to be historical.
No, although they've been interpreted by people later on as historical.
Exactly. And so I think what's going on is, so Mark's gospel, our earliest gospel, has no birth narrative. And when Matthew and Luke come to write their gospels, they think this is really important. We should have some kind of birth narrative. Luke's is the most elaborate, begins with the pregnancy of Elizabeth with John the Baptist. But, you were right, there's this story in the birth narratives you'll have seen in the Nativity. It gets a bit confusing because, there's Bethlehem, but then Jesus is also from Nazareth.
Yeah.
And
Just a bit of background on the Gospels, Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. Obviously, Matthew and John were part of the 12 apostles. Luke was a doctor, and he was very well organized, and he did, his homework, investigation, interviews. He is the most credible gospel out there. So if you read Luke, he did his homework. He didn't even know Jesus, but he did everything. He's an expert in this, right? He's gathering this information and really, making sure that the details are as accurate as possible. And then Mark, there's things out there that say that he was, he lived in that house where they had the Last Supper. I think that was his mom's house, and they were in the upper room. And there's another story where Mark, it says it's Mark, but I forgot what happened, but there was a passage in the story where somebody ran away naked, and that was also Mark. Let me see where that's from. Yeah, so we look at Mark 14, 51 to 51 to 52. Mark 14, 51 to 52. All right, so it says, a young man was following him, wearing nothing but a linen sheet over his naked body, and they seized him. but he pulled free of the linen sheet and escaped naked. Apparently that was Mark, but that's neither here nor there. Let's continue.
Galilee, and don't they go to Egypt at one point? And it's
Yeah.
all a bit confusing,
Yeah.
and it's because they're trying to fulfill these prophecies.
Yeah.
So there's a prophecy in Hosea which says, "Out of Egypt I shall call my son," where God is clearly talking about Israel coming out of the land of Egypt. But this prophecy, "Out of Egypt I shall call my son," Matthew wanted to take this, or Luke wanted to take this and make it about Jesus. And so you get this story of the flight to Egypt, where Herod hears that the king of the Jews has been born, and he's like, we must kill all of the infants in the land. And so Joseph is warned in a dream, and they run away to Egypt, so that when they come back again, the Gospels can say, so fulfills the prophecy, "Out of Egypt I shall pull my son." So maybe that did actually happen, but it's unlikely. Matthew at one point also quotes a prophecy that doesn't exist.
Yeah. Does this matter? I mean, what this boils down to, that there was a historical Jesus, most likely. He wasn't necessarily the figure portrayed for the reasons you've just been describing, but he did go on to change the world fundamentally because people believed in whatever he was saying.
Yeah.
Does the truth of what he was matter?
It does to Christians, because the big Christian claim is a physical one, which is that Jesus rose from the dead.
Yeah.
And that's really important. Paul famously writes in 1 Corinthians, if Christ has not been raised, your faith is futile, you're still in your sins, right? That is what allows for salvation.
And it's fundamentally, in a rational world, it's fundamentally implausible.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Like, resurrections seem pretty implausible, right? But with God, anything is possible, right? So it's not like outside of the realm of possibility for me to imagine that if there is a God, he could do something like that. The issue is that for Christians, this is really important. If Jesus didn't rise from the dead, then it is all meaningless. Whereas if you're someone who just thinks Jesus had this really important message, even if you accept the mythicism around his birth and his death, you can still think that he was really important and that something really weird happened that made people found this religion around.
Which you would think. You would believe this.
I think so, yeah. I mean, to the extent that even in early Christianity, I'm a big fan of looking into the alternate, expanded edition director's cut.
Isn't it crazy that, he is an atheist and he knows so much. The kid is so knowledgeable. He says it multiple times that New Testament is my jam. That's crazy to come from an atheist. I understand that atheists, they, look into religions, and that's why they call themselves atheists, because they did a little bit of studying and they found a reason why they don't believe or follow. But to this extent, and this guy made a huge platform. But yeah, just the fact that he studied up this much and made his platform and basically, gained fame off of trying to not prove, but trying to add some sense into Christian beliefs and Christians' minds. Like, hey, have you ever looked at this? Have you ever looked at that? But and I gotta respect that, because most people are just like, I don't believe that. That's not real. Like, there's nothing to prove that. It's like, but have you done any research? They're like, no, I don't have to. Like, that's not real. And it's like, so you're just ignorant. That's basically what it is. Like, if I didn't know something and I said that that's wrong and that's all lies, that makes me ignorant to that. I don't know if it's true or not. Why? Because I haven't done my own research on evidence. But this guy does. And, he probably doesn't believe in the spiritual side of it, the faith side, but he does believe in the historicity of it, which, I tip my hat to him for doing that deep dive research.
Expanded edition director's cut of the Gospels, the Gnostic. Or the apocryphal Gospels, I should say, because they're not all Gnostic, but these weird other Gospels that aren't part of the canon, mostly later. So the four Gospels in the Bible are probably our earliest, right? And we have these later texts, which people get confused when I discuss them, because they think that they're true or trustworthy. Like, they're not, but they do give us an insight into what people believed, because this was their text. This is what they thought. And a lot of these Gospels are either sort of unconcerned with the resurrection, or think that it kind of doesn't matter. Like, the Gospel of Thomas is a famous one. It's a list of sayings, doesn't mention the resurrection.
Does it mention the afterlife? Because that seems to be another critical part of this in religion. We had David Baddiel on this program talking about he's an atheist, but he understands why people believe in God.
Yeah.
And his argument is they believe in God because they need to believe there's something more after they die. And that's
Yeah.
an argument for why Christianity is so successful, because it says to a bunch of downtrodden people, your life might be now, but it's going to be great thereafter.
I think that's a little bit unfair, because it's this sort of slave morality idea that like you take, it's the Nietzschean view, that you take something which people can't help, which is their downtrodden status, they're poor, they don't have any power, you know, they're essentially immiserated, and because they can't help being those things, they decide to invent like a system of virtue around them. So suddenly it's good to be, you know, the whole Sermon on the Mount, you know, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. It's very sort of, like it's designed to make you feel
It's
good.
canny. It's mass media. It's approaching the mass. It's mass media.
But the thing is, this is clearly not just something which consoles people who are poor and humble. This is clearly something which people who are powerful and rich and well off.
Nietzsche's philosophy of life centers on life affirmation and creating your own meaning in a world without inherent preordained purpose. I've never heard of that.
Clearly something which people who are powerful and rich and well off discover when they have their come to Jesus moment and realize that it's all meaningless, right? And so it's not, I don't think it's as simple as like this was just invented to console people who are downtrodden, because then why would it also be so effective at transforming the lives of people whose lives are ostensibly going quite well? Powerful rulers convert to Christianity. You know, Constantine converting to Christianity set the Roman Empire.
Well,
on
the
path.
genius that it does both is, I mean, that's the genius of Christianity. If you were to look at it from a PR campaign,
Exactly,
it has a huge base.
But if it were true, that's what you'd expect. So the fact that you can describe it as, oh, you know, it brings comfort to people, and there's this implication that, well, that explains why it exists. You know, it's not true. It's just that it brings comfort to people. Well, if it were true, you would expect it to succeed basically any way you find it, and it does. Like anybody in any position in their life can find something in Christianity to like, right? And so I do think it's a little bit simplistic when people say, yeah, religion just gives you consolation, especially because so much of religion is not just about the afterlife. You know, the afterlife's a really important concept, but it's not like Christians are thinking about it day in and day out. They're thinking about the proper way to orient themselves.
And it's not there in Judaism either, is it?
That's true, yeah. There's much less of a conception of the afterlife. And it's interesting how that evolves over time in the Bible as well, because the Bible is also this like written history. If you can work out roughly which texts are older and which ones are newer, you can track the way that beliefs shift. Like the existence of heaven and hell, the existence of Satan, for example, who begins as this character in the Old Testament, the Satan, the accuser, and he's part of God's divine council.
Yeah.
And he's like, you know, advising God and like bartering with God, to sort of later become this embodied being who tempts Jesus in the desert to, in Christian like history and mythology, to become like the ruler of hell. It's a trajectory that you can track. But I think what's really important is that most of the ideas that you associate with Christianity, like the afterlife and heaven and this kind of stuff, are essentially not biblical.
Yeah.
That is, at the very least, the way that they're characterized has much more to do with Dante than it has to do with Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Yeah, that's an interesting view. You know, that's an interesting take on it. But Christianity does offer a lot of great things in a person's life, even if they do or don't believe in afterlife, even if they do or don't believe in Jesus' resurrection, even if they do or don't believe in all the historical acts in the Bible, Old Testament or New Testament. It still adds the morality and the value in your life and just a greater purpose. Like you're not some selfish, greedy, envious person just walking this earth and just trying to consume. You know, Christianity offers a lot of like outward love, you know, instead of you always trying to fulfill your happiness in yourself, no matter who you're stepping over, no matter what you're doing to get to that happiness. Christianity brings the outward love. It's like I can find content in, you know, this life, whether I'm in a beat up car, whether I'm in a small place, whether I'm alone or not, whether I'm, you know, burdened with work or kids, I will find happiness and pour into others because he pours into me. And that's a great way to view life, I feel. You don't come off as somebody that's like, he's just selfish, and be careful with him because he's going to walk over you and need you only when he wants something from you. And then when he gets what he wants, you're done. That's not a way to live, and that's not a way to be, to admire, to become. You know, you walk in the path of Jesus and try to hit 10% of his morality and his values and his teachings. And trust me, I know from experience and I know from testimonies of others that have had harder lives than you, that have been more lower than you, that have been above where you are now, status, money, possessions, you know, just all of that. And when they find Christ and they are saved, they find the love and value in what the bigger and what the bigger picture is. So I just want to leave that little gem for you guys. Take it or leave it. I mean, it's completely up to you. It's all free will. I'm just so happy that I found my love and my faith, and kind of like something bigger than me. You know, it's not about me. It's about him. This mission is for him. This objective is for him. You start looking at it that way, you will definitely save yourself from a lot of selfish heartache and headaches. But I'm gonna wrap it up here, guys. You know, I love you, bless you, and you have a great week.